The history of the Imperium is full of glorious periods. The Great Crusade, the Horus Heresy, the Long War, and the fall of Cardia. Epochs of history written in the blood of trillions of people over the course of 10,000 years. But the listed campaigns are far from a complete record of events of those stormy years when the fate of the Imperium hung by a thread, and a single touch could have plunged it into the abyss. Long ago, before his ascension to the Golden Throne, the Emperor of Mankind put to the sword one of the greatest empires of the galaxy. In archival records, this victory is marked as the triumph on Ullanor. Perhaps it then seemed that this victory would spell the end of the Greenskins as a powerful race, and that the Orcs would never recover from the blow dealt to them. Well, some hopes were not destined to come true, for the beast came and dispelled them like a morning dream. War in the world of Warhammer is almost never a conquest, a fight for money or resources. The essence of a conflict in the galaxy is the survival of the species. It's an all-out assault, a genocide, a war to the last man breathing. Victory is not in overcoming the enemy, but in destroying them, erasing their memory from the living, leaving no trace of their deeds, crushing all their achievements to dust, erasing every trace of their existence from all sources. No enemy can recover from such a defeat. That is the essence of victory. Lord Commander Solar Macarius. After the death of Horus Lupercal and the Great Scouring, the Imperium gradually began to recover from the consequences of the Civil War. By the middle of the 32nd millennium, it had reached a certain stability and strengthened its position on the galactic stage. The Chaos traitors were resolving their conflicts in the Eye of Terror, and the Xenos were mostly driven to the periphery of inhabited space. Nothing foretold disaster, and the majority of the Imperium's space fleet moved to the border regions of space, directed by a fleet commander named Lansung. High Lord Admiral Lansung, Supreme Commander of the Imperial Navy, an outstanding officer and politician who managed to take a leading position in the Senatorum Imperialis, the highest council of terror, for a brief period. During the War of the Beast, Lansung generally did not show himself in the best light. After the crisis ended, the Lord Admiral fell victim to palace intrigues. Meanwhile, a company of the Imperial Fist Chapter was exterminating Xenos on the planet Ardamantua. Creatures known as Chromes were fleeing from an unknown danger and in panic attacked anything on their path. But a routine operation to cleanse the Xeno threat turned into a true catastrophe. Suddenly, the space around the planet erupted with gravitational anomalies. Areas of distorted gravitation, seismic activity, and frenzied Xenos that rushed to attack literally anything shell-shocked even the Space Marines. Forces of the Astra Militarum rushed to their aid. An incredible sight unfolded before the stunned Imperials. Ardamantua had acquired its own satellite. Yet it was not merely a celestial body, but an artificial planetoid swarming with hordes of orcs. They came to settle the score with the humans for Ullanor. They were led by a war boss of unprecedented strength and size, to whom only one name could be fitting: the Beast. After the arrival of the Orc attack moon, the situation for the Loyalists became hopeless. But the leader of the Guardsmen did not falter, and in the last moments of his life made the only correct decision. The Lord Commander Militant Heth, the supreme leader of the Astra Militarum, a political adversary of Admiral Lansang in the Senatorum Imperialis. He was known for leading troops personally into battle and his ability to communicate with common soldiers. Before the destruction of his flagship, Heth managed to send a message to Terra, warning the Imperium of the invasion by the Orcs and their attack moon. Thus began the War of the Beast. A fortress, it is a living being. Its commander is the brain, walls are the bones, sensors are the eyes and ears. The garrison is the blood of the stronghold, and its fists are the weapons. Two conclusions can be drawn from this understanding. If an organ fails, the fortress dies, and if it dies, no single organ will survive on its own. Morden Barr, a fortification specialist, knew that. Despite that, the battle at Ardamantua became a slaughter for humanity, a great tragedy for the entire Imperium. The remnants of the Imperial Fists. Chapter and almost its entire battle fleet came to aid, but the Imperials underestimated the level of the threat. Countless hordes of orcs, natural and gravitational anomalies caused by the arrival of the attack moon, mercilessly and swiftly eradicated nearly all the defenders of humanity. The Astartes perished in entire companies, and soon only one battle brother remained from the whole Imperial Fists chapter. Captain of the Second Company, also known as the Company of the Daylight Wall, Kland, gravely injured and in a recuperative coma. The last Astartes of his chapter until its refoundation, about which we will speak more later. To win the War of the Beast, he violated the Codex Astartes. Subsequently, he became a prominent politician, Lord Commander of the Imperium, and the founder of the Death Watch. Orc attack moons were truly terrifying weapons. Their teleportation proved catastrophic for the planets and moons unfortunate enough to be nearby. Gravitational forces went haywire, tearing and rending celestial bodies. The force fields of each attack moon could endure an incredible amount of enemy fire, and a single touch of such moon would cause the shields and engines of Imperial ships to explode. A single strike of their gravitational whip was enough to turn entire squadrons of cruisers into blazing wrecks. The surface of some moons bore faces of unimaginable size, and at the beast's will, these faces could move or even speak. To top it all off, each such planetoid was not only an enormous gun platform, but also a portal for endless hordes of orcs. The process of creating each moon signified the death of some planet, because it was literally grinded down into pieces, and from the fragments of the dead world, a new moon was built. After each teleportation, it needed to be recharged with fragments of celestial bodies, which meant even more destruction, catastrophes, and deaths. Ardamantua faced the same sad fate. The attack moon consumed it entirely. It was this cosmic monstrosity that Captain Kland, his battle brothers, and the entire Imperium had to confront. Fortunately, two more Fists, who had fallen into a restorative coma, were picked up by a Mechanicus expedition led by artisan Argus van Auken. Despite all the efforts of the tech priests, two of Kland's comrades died. At that moment, the captain of the Second Company became the last surviving Imperial Fist. After his awakening, Kland refused to return to Terra. He independently set off for the Fall system, where he initiated a secret protocol called the Last Wall. The captain convened a council of Rogel Dawn's heirs. His call was answered by the Black Templars, Crimson Fists, Excoriators, Iron Knights, and the Fists Exemplar. Together they committed a forbidden and unthinkable act. For the duration of this war, the successor chapters of Rogel Dawn united once again into a legion of Astartes. They simply had no other choice. It soon became clear that the attack moon seen by the servants of the Golden Throne in the orbit of Ardamantua was not the only one. The green-skinned poured upon humanity in a bloodthirsty wave, with billions of orcs rampaging across the expanse of space. Initially they captured separate subsectors, then entire sectors. Battles raged everywhere. Heretical cults whose members worshipped the beast as a deity bowed their heads, though this could not save the cultists from its wrath. This, like many other wars, was not a conquest. But even in the face of the apocalypse, the Lords of Terra continued to fight for power. Few managed to understand that the extinction of the human race was imminent. Margaret A. Wienand, the inquisitorial delegate at the Senatorum Imperialis, was one of the first to grasp the incredible degree of threat emanating from the beast and his War. She literally forced Admiral Lansung to lead the fleet to confront the green-skinned, who laid siege to Port Sanctus, important shipyards in the solar segmentum. The Imperial forces received a fierce reception from the Orc ships, behind which loomed the giant silhouette of an attack moon. In this battle, things did not go well for the Imperials. The green-skinned used the tactic of sudden boarding, teleporting their warriors directly through the void shields of the Imperium's warships. The bloodthirsty creatures slaughtered entire ship crews, smashed and blew up equipment. With each passing second, hundreds of soldiers gave their lives in a tense struggle against the superior enemy forces. Almost losing hope for victory, Lansung and his aides put all their skills into a decisive counterattack against the attack moon. With each discharge, its gravitic lash turned the pride and beauty of the Imperial fleet into twisted, burning wreckage. But the humans overcame the enemy in a typical Imperial manner, through sheer firepower and self-sacrifice. Their guns weakened the enemy flagship's defences, and then swarms of small ships rushed inside to destroy its power systems. The suicide heroes succeeded. An explosion of titanic force occurred, and the battle moon ceased to exist. However, the victor's joy was short-lived. Another planet emerged from the warp, and this time its menacing shadow loomed directly over Holy Terror. Allegations of incompetence and corruption were levelled against Margareta Wienand, who had ensured the survival of Port Sanctus. Her accuser was the powerful Inquisitor Veritas. Not only did he accuse her, but he also sent an assassin team after her soul. This Puritan, seeking to make the Inquisition's power over humanity absolute, was willing to go to any lengths. Delegate Wienand faked her death and went into hiding, barely fending off one assassination attempt after another. Meanwhile, the Orc invasion already engulfed the entire Imperium. "You will shoot at enemies to take them out of the game for sure. You will shoot at traitors twice to ensure they all receive their deserved death," was a famous quote by Lord Governor Charleston at the time. The flames of war engulfed every sector of the human state. Many Space Marines could not even send troops to Terra as they stood defending their own holdings. A significant portion of the Imperial fleet was lost in the battle for Port Sanctus, and part of it was scattered. Panic gripped the humanity. The Arbites could not quell the riots in time. Caught in a desperate situation, the High Lords lost their ability to reason soundly. Admiral Lansung lost his power and was deposed. The Senatorum Imperialis took refuge in the Imperial Palace, and there a truly insane venture was born, now known as the Proletarian Crusade. Jaskina Tull, the Speaker of the Chartist Captains, seized the initiative in the Council. Her plan was as follows. Millions of fanatics, supported by a limited contingent of guardsmen and the Adeptus Arbites, would land on the attack moon, sweeping away any Xenos resistance. The head of the Imperial cult, Ecclesiarch Mesring, supported the idea and harnessed all of the Church's resources for its propaganda. Despite many colleagues' lords being strongly against this crusade, well, sometimes even madmen get lucky. Likely only because of this were the hordes, inflamed by fanatical sermons, able to reach their goal on civilian ships. The Orcs severely thinned the disordered ranks of the fanatics, but it was still a human wave, amidst which could be seen here and there Leman Russ tanks, chimeras, and hellhounds. By sheer overwhelming numbers alone, the attacking madmen managed to push the enemies back to the very gates leading inside the battle moon. Every step was paid for with thousands of lives. Hills of mangled corpses marked the Crusade's advance. And all this reckless bravery of the crowd was in vain. The Orcs simply shifted the mountains on the planetoid surface, and the humans, like insects, were crushed by the folds of the terrain. The Proletarian Crusade was annihilated in an instant. As if mocking their vanquished opponent, the Orcs sent a delegation to Terra. From the landed vessel emerged 3 Xenos. One of them, speaking comprehensible Gothic, delivered an ultimatum: either the unconditional surrender of Terra or its destruction. The members of the Council of Terra were left speechless, and the Orcs departed. The Imperium stood on the brink of destruction. The Crusade was defeated. Grand Admiral Lansung had lost the will to resist. Inquisitor Mesring began to lose his mind, secretly worshipping the beast as a deity. Sacred Mars did not respond to requests, pleas, and prayers. The only bright moment was the reconciliation between 2 Inquisitors, Veritas and Wienand, in the name of saving the Imperium. This alliance was brokered through the active mediation of the Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum. However, the Draken Vangorit, the chief assassin of the Imperium, was also an experienced puppeteer. He had far-reaching plans for each High Lord. Nevertheless, the Orc embassy was far from the strangest occurrence on Terra in those days. After the Orc delegation departed, a squad of 7 Eldar Harlequins infiltrated the Imperial Palace. The Xenos claimed to come in peace, but did not hesitate to kill anyone who stood in their way. The elite guard units of the Lucifer Blacks were no match for the Eldar. The devilishly fast Xenos gutted the guards like fish, effortlessly dodging return fire. Leaving behind mutilated bodies, the Harlequins reached the inner sanctum of the palace, where they were met by the furious Adeptus Custodes. Each of the Emperor's bodyguards far exceeded the strength and skill of even the most seasoned Space Marine, and thus, despite all their inhuman mastery, the Eldar began to fall one by one. Eventually, the leader of the Harlequins, Shadowseer Lariel, was captured near the throne room itself. With great difficulty, Van Gorich and Veritas took Lariel from the custody of the custodians for interrogation. The seer claimed that she had been sent by Eldred Ulthran, leader of the craft world Ulthwi, to deliver a message to the Emperor. She also asserted that Ulthran had calmed the warp around Terra, thus aiding humanity in the war against the beast. To substantiate her words, the seer presented her captors with a tooth of Nocturne Drake, which Eldred had allegedly received from the Primarch Vulcan himself. After this, events unfolded with dizzying speed. Like a bolt from the blue, the last wall crashed down upon the Orcs' attack moon, which still hung in orbit around Terra. Captain Kurland's daring plan succeeded. Accompanying him were 2,800 battle brothers, as well as the Martian forces consisting of 5 Skitarii detachments, 7 cohorts of Legio Cybernetica, and the entire battle fleet of the Red Planet. Like the Emperor's avenging sword, the defenders of Terra descended upon the Xenos. Cyclonic torpedoes struck the attack moon, weaponry with which the Imperium executed worlds and condemned them to obliteration. Once the flames had been extinguished, humanity's finest warriors raced to the scorched surface of the planet. Shoulder to shoulder, Terminator Space Marines and Martian Skitarii rushed into battle. Massive tanks grounded the ashes of the corpse and unwary enemies under their treads, their weapons thundering relentlessly. Mechanicus robots, with perfect precision, plastered enemy positions with fire. However, the Orcs' gravity whip hit back mercilessly, and each of its shots tore Imperial ships to shreds. Only at the cost of great losses did the Allies manage to disable the attack moon's portal. The chapter of the Iron Knights, whose timely arrival decided the battle's outcome, showed great skill and honor. Its master, Malphonse, heroically fell at the hands of the Orc war boss, but not before saving Kurland's life. Having destroyed 2/3 of the battle moon's surface, the exhausted Imperials retreated. Encounters with Xenos always rekindle faith in humanity. People believe that journeys beyond the Imperium wonderfully limit one's horizon. Helen Bosch, rogue trader. The victory over the Greenskins invigorated the Imperium. The problem was that its glory was appropriated by the Lord Commander of the Imperium, Udin Macht Udo, although his own contributions left much to be desired. Moreover, as the population of Terra celebrated their liberation from the Orcs, Udo convened the Masters of the Last Wall and harshly reprimanded them for violating the Codex Astartes. He demanded that the destruction of the Imperial Fists be kept secret, and the united fleet of Dawn's Sons was immediately divided. Additionally, the Lord Commander banned any further attempts to destroy the attack moon. Loyal servants of the Golden Throne, even the enraged Astartes, whose combat feats had just been smeared with dirt, could endure much. But when Udo attempted to remove the Inquisition from the Senatorum Imperialis, he faced protests. The Lord Commander's own colleagues in the Council, as well as the Astartes he had so eagerly blamed for all mortal sins, turned against him. Udo was taken into custody, and he retired from high politics forever. One less problem for the Imperium. However, there was still the Adeptus Mechanicus, who behaved increasingly suspicious during the crisis. First, they did not respond to calls for assistance, then reluctantly provided military force for Terra's liberation. Moreover, the tech priests annihilated a squad of Imperial assassins sent to Mars to investigate. Furthermore, it was the Mechanicus who demanded from the ex-Lord Commander the remnants of the attack moon. All this required immediate investigation. A limited contingent of Fists exemplars was dispatched to the Red Planet. There, the Space Marines were met by a fully battle-ready army of the Mechanicus cult, led by Argus van Auken, the very tech priest who found and saved Kurland after the Battle of Ardamantua. The Imperials and the servants of the Omnissiah stood frozen opposite each other. The situation had reached a boiling point. But suddenly, a stray shot from the Martian rover struck an incoming Astartes drop pod. The tense silence instantly erupted into bloodshed. Two branches of humanity began to annihilate each other in senseless slaughter. Only the intervention of the head of the Mechanicus cult halted the firefight. The fabricator general of Mars, named Kubik, did not wish for another civil war. He ordered the release of Urquidec, another survivor from Ardamantua who possessed valuable intelligence on the whereabouts of the beast. However, Urquidex had been half-transformed into a servitor for attempting to disclose the secret plans of the Fabricator General to the assassins of Vangorit. The venerable Fabricator General had become engrossed in Orc teleportation technology and planned to use it to remove Mars from the solar system, leaving Terra to the mercy of the beast. In light of recent events, Kubik seemed to have changed his mind and joined the anti-Orc coalition. Another important secret was revealed by Inquisitor Veritas. Following his directions, the united forces of humanity rushed to the planet Caldera, where they found the Primarch Vulcan, who alone was standing against the Wa of the Orcs. Bound by an oath, the Primarch refused to leave this world until a victory over the Greenskins was achieved. The beast's minions destroyed the world with a gravitational beam, gathering its fragments into a new attack moon. As his allies held the Xenos at bay at great cost, Vulcan set out on a mission. With a massive hammer he shattered the beam generator, and with it the Orc constructions on Caldera and its orbit. In the process the energy surge literally tore the Primarch into fragments. But Vulcan, like the Emperor, was an eternal being and rose from the dead in due time. Whole and unharmed, he rejoined the armies of humanity in their campaign against Ullanor. The humans gathered an impressively formidable army under their banners. To Dawn's Space Marines were added battle brothers from other genetic lineages, Ultramarines, Dark Angels, Space Wolves, and Blood Angels. Alongside them were Mechanicus infantry and robots, Imperial Knights, the Legio Titanicus, not to mention a formidable number of guardsmen. All were ready for an apocalyptic battle for the world, where the Emperor had once already reclaimed the galaxy from the Orcs. It was time to show the Greenskins their place once more. Upon arriving, they found that the Orcs had transformed the once desolate Ullanor into a densely populated planet covered with cities. The Space Marine librarians, at the cost of their own lives, discovered the beast's hiding place. Many of them went mad from the unprecedented surge of Wa energy and then turned on their own comrades. With heavy hearts, the Space Marines granted their doomed brothers the Emperor's peace. Now the Allies' path lay to the planetary capital Gorkogrod. Hatred, 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 pure feeling, deep feeling, hatred, 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 let it flow and spill freely. That was the Imperial chant for inspiration. Meanwhile, the Orcs had prepared many surprises for the pesky Humies. Upon arriving at Ullanor, the Officio Assassinorum operative managed to ascertain that by allowing humans to approach the walls of Gorkogrod, they acted cunningly and calculatedly. While the forces of the Imperium fought their way to the capital and unsuccessfully tried to destroy it with orbital bombardment, a true apocalypse armada was hidden within the city, shielded by a force field. There lay a horde of mega-armoured Orcs, each the size of a Gorkanaut, and they were covered by a mega-gargant, and beyond the temple, the entire planet was directed by an unyielding iron will, compressing the Greenskins into a fist, making them act as one deadly whole. Thanks to it, the Orcs drove the Imperials into traps, under the crossfire of gravitational and all weaponry that was beyond the understanding of the Mechanica. Even giant war machines, Titans, found worthy adversaries in what seemed like an endless number of Orcs. Every meter gained, every second spent on Ullanor cost the attackers dearly. On the approach to Gorkogrod, half of the guardsmen and every third Astartes died the death of the brave. But any sacrifice was an acceptable price for victory. Ullanor proved to be more than just a celestial body. The Orcs had turned it into an attack planet, its goal simple: to reach Terra and conquer it. Kland and the leader of the Adeptus Mechanicus, Magos Zhokov, devised an alternative plan to strike at the food supplies to starve the Orcs into submission. The plan succeeded. The shields of Gorkogrod were deactivated, and the orcs rushed into a counterattack. The Temple of Gork and Mork, in the centre of the capital, turned out to be nothing but a super-gargant beyond any classification. The beams of this monstrosity reduced whole units to ashes. Master Kland, Vulcan, and the last 3,000 Astartes, in a final desperate move, descended upon the living temple. Reaching its centre, they discovered a 10-metre statue that suddenly came to life and scattered the veteran space marines like annoying fleas. This was the beast itself, a unique representative of its race. The encounter with it was not only extraordinary, but also unprecedented and unique. Only the Primarch Vulcan could face the beast and prevail. Fighting, the two war leaders plunged right into the temple generator, which burned and crackled with the psychic energy of the Waaagh. But the immortal Primarch was not akin to the weak librarians who would have been driven mad by this uncontrolled power. He merged with the Waaagh into a single whole, embraced it, became infused with it, and drove his hammer into its core, right into the face of the beast. The temple generator exploded, the blast consuming both the Primarch and the Orc Titan. Left without a leader, the Orcs lost their fighting spirit. Their resistance was finally broken. The battered Imperial armada returned to terror. But then a devilish cry echoed from all Vox receivers. "I am slaughter! I am slaughter!" This scream roared for several weeks, and it gradually became clear that the beast's war was far from over. The Waaagh had resurrected, meaning they would have to revisit Ullanor to finish what they had started. But for now, it seemed impossible. The losses were too great, and the psychic field generated by the greenskins was a true weapon of victory for them. A more subtle approach was required. Kland took matters into his own hands. Overcoming the resistance of the High Lords of Terror, he secured the right to form a new kind of troops. But it was only when the attack moon, hanging dead weight in Terror's orbit, came alive again, and orcs started pouring out from there, that Kland succeeded in establishing a special unit equipped with the means and strength to annihilate the most dangerous Xenos. Clad in black power armor, Astartes from various chapters took the name Deathwatch to honor their brethren who had fallen on Ullanor. However, the very first operation of the Deathwatch turned into a Pyrrhic victory. The teleportation beacons of the Mechanicus placed by the Astartes on the attack moon malfunctioned. Half of the planetoid vanished while the other half crashed down onto the surface of Terra. The wreckage resulted in another global catastrophe, and when the remnants of the moon rained down as a hellish storm upon the tormented people below, millions more perished in the flames. Even the Imperial Palace was damaged. Yet despite everything, people clung to hope, and the true defenders of humanity never ceased their actions for even a minute. The Imperials were fortunate to learn the location of the last bastion of the Silent Sisterhood, an almost extinct organization whose members were pariah warriors. Their very presence could disrupt the Waaagh, strike at its core, and deprive the orcs of their advantage in the upcoming battle. The Imperial forces arrived at the besieged sisters just in time and helped them repel the orc fortification. But the decisive factor in the negotiations was the skill of Margaret A. Winand. The delegate bonded so closely with the pariahs that all further interactions with the sisters were conducted through her. The strategy of the Imperials was simple and ingenious. They hoped to capture an orc psyker, and with the help of the Silent Sisterhood, unleash a wave of the pariah aura through him, devastating to the power of the Waaagh. To test this technology in practice, that is, exterminating a horde of greenskins with psychic resonance, the humans set off for Ullanor. Without overcomplicating things, they directed several ships directly at the shield covering Gorkogrod. Taking advantage of the resulting breach, the assault team landed near the temple. The final battle was near. And then it turned out that the beast also had a simple and ingenious plan. The shield closed behind the attackers, cutting them off from the rest of the army. Orcs poured out from all sides, fending off the attacking enemies, paving every meter of space with their own bloody bodies. The Imperials broke into the throne room and encountered the bodyguards of the Orc war boss, surrounded by gargants, each larger than a Warhound-class Titan. The beast itself came out to meet the brave Imperials, a monstrosity on whose enormous body battle cannons Rocket launchers, autocannons, flamers, and other weapons looked like children's toys. But the pariah ritual worked. The anti-psychic wave neutralized the orcs, and the beast hesitated for a moment before continuing to toss space marines aside like kittens. Taking advantage of the creature's brief confusion, Kland and his battle comrades rushed at the Xenos and killed it. Their joy was short-lived. The beast died, but a new beast took its place. In the main hall of the temple there wasn't one throne but 6, and there were at least as many beasts, the finest representatives of their race. The monster that survived the battle with Primarch Vulcan killed Kland without much ceremony. Then it casually stomped the mighty space marine into a bloody pulp. The great warrior fought to the end but was defeated, and now the entire chapter of the Imperial Fists disappeared along with him. After taking the commander's body, the Imperials hastily retreated. Yet another defeat meant absolutely nothing. It was about the survival of the human race, and the deaths of millions of heroes were quite an acceptable price for the Imperium to continue to live. A veteran of the Horus heresy, chapter master of the Exemplars Maximus Thane, took command of the Imperial armies. He immediately abandoned attempts to negotiate with the Lords and took full responsibility upon himself. The first thing Thane ordered was to restore the Imperial Fists chapter anew, because the most faithful of the faithful cannot just disappear. Because even the arch-traitor Horus could not exterminate the Sons of Dawn. Because the Imperial Fists are the bulwark that shields Holy Terror from any threat. And so it was, and so it will be always, as long as the Imperium exists. All the chapters of the Last Wall gave part of their battle brothers, so that the fallen could rise from oblivion like a phoenix from the ashes, and the people of Terror, sparing no effort, honoured their defenders who, shining in the armour of the Imperial Fists, paraded before them. Yet the situation in the Imperium remained critical. The orcs seemed to find a second wind and launched a counter-offensive. The Greenskins destroyed most of the Imperial fleet in the region, while its captains hesitated, uncertain of what to do in the absence of clear orders. Many Space Marines left the coalition to defend their own domains. Prompted by the deranged Ecclesiarch Mesering, cardinal worlds began to surrender en masse to the orcs, perishing one after another. Under these circumstances, Thane had to act decisively. In full view of everyone, the Space Marines shot Mesring as a traitor and a coward. For the third assault on Ullanor, they assembled the best of the best. Thane personally took command of the main contingent of the Imperial Fists and the Sisters of Silence. Magos Zhokov led the forces of the Adeptus Mechanicus into battle. Marshal of the Black Templars Bohemond commanded the army of the Last Wall. And at the head of the entire Imperial fleet sailed the Phalanx, the flagship of the Imperial Fists and the largest ship of humanity. Ullanor was subjected not only to orbital but also an asteroid bombardment, and the attackers landed on the asteroid itself. It appears they've learned something from the orcs. The strike of the drop rock turned Gorkogrod into ruins. The human strategy remained the same: infiltration of the palace, an anti-psionic explosion, and the destruction of the beasts. However, those creatures did not intend to surrender so easily. The Imperial flotilla suffered devastating damage, and the orcs took the Phalanx by boarding. 2 companies of the Imperial Fists aboard were able to hold back the enemies, but their forces were rapidly dwindling. The war-torn and injured warriors of Thane fought their way into the throne room once again. There were so many orcs around the temple that the Imperials had to literally carve a corridor with an anti-war resonance. And so the servants of the Emperor were left with only one living orc psyker. Everything was at stake. The attackers needed to push back the Greenskins until the psychic bomb detonated. And to crush them, the leader of the beasts, the largest of the orc war bosses, appeared. No words are sufficient to describe the intensity of this clash. The giant-sized creatures and their retinue crushed the exhausted humans, but they did not surrender and held back the fury of an enemy that, truthfully, should have been killed by a Titan. However, in the last moments, the Silent Sisterhood performed their role once again. The mysterious power of the pariahs distorted the war field, causing it to boil and then explode, blowing off the head of the Orcs' supreme war boss. This time, definitively and irrevocably. Once again, humanity managed to survive in the hostile and cruel cosmos, as always. Thus, for the second time in 1.5 millennia, the Imperium endured a devastating tragedy. Even more technologies were lost, even more worlds fell into eternal abandonment, and for the first time in the history of the Imperium, it was ruled by an usurper, who, none other than the old schemer Van Gorich. The Grand Master of Assassins firmly decided that the power over the state should no longer belong to the weak-willed Lords of Terror, who eternally bicker among themselves to the detriment of the common good. With an elegant maneuver, the assassins simply eliminated the Senatorum Imperialis, placing submissive puppets in the empty seats, and began to rule from behind the scenes. But that's another story.